That which can be destroyed by the truth should be. Peice. My husband and I moved closer to family briefly a few years ago. It seemed like a great idea at the time, and a really great place to settle for a bit. The place was like a warm blanket of nostalgia for me. Although the area wasn't the best, it was quiet, and it was a small town. It reminded me of where I grew up before I was placed with my family. It was really convenient to have family nearby as a resource and a support. We were able to rent a really beautiful home nestled in the loop of a cul-de-sac. A statuesque set of trees framed the backyard and cradled it, framing the fence nicely. A sure sign the backyard was close to the forest and out of the view of prying eyes. I'm an introvert with a touch of paranoia. According to my husband, I'm just a wonderful little bundle of nerves. Ultimately, I was more interested in a home where I could keep an eye on my surroundings. This was a wise choice as I started to get a very bad vibe from one of my neighbors, and I could never really understand why until I paid closer attention. It started slowly, but it was clear to me. They were definitely crazy. From time to time, the husband next door would mention things about fixing things in the house. Prior to us being there, he shared how close he and the previous family had been. I initially guessed he had been friends with the family that lived here before us, but now I'm not so sure. He would also frequently volunteer to help us, and my husband would entertain his requests to help at times. He'd been in our house twice, but never past the living room. Like I said, I'm an introvert, so I don't like strangers in my safe space. He constantly talked about how he had helped with updates or building plans for the previous family and how he helped update the children's rooms. He almost seemed to be begging us to let him in the house. We began remodeling soon thereafter so that we could update things to our liking, and we even got solar panels for the roofing. It felt like an eyesore, but it really is a money saver for all of the electronics. We had a large brick home, and the neighbor had a cute Victorian-style home, also brick. I felt both homes were equally beautiful, but obviously I loved my house more. Once the renovation started, the neighbor would ask about what updates we planned on making and ask a lot of questions. My husband would oblige him and converse. We really didn't think anything of it. At a point, every time my husband would talk to the neighbor, he would notice the man making comparisons. I didn't worry about it too much until I bought the car. I noticed the neighbor's wife, bought the same model and color shortly thereafter, although not the same year, likely because the vehicle I purchased was new and only had 200 miles on it. They had stuck a bumper sticker to it, which made me cringe. I don't understand the point of marring a brand new vehicle like that. The sticker was vague and odd. That which can be destroyed by the truth should be. Peice. They were so odd. My husband bought an SUV, a Mercedes, for carpooling and getting the kids where they needed to be and back. This male neighbor, who also didn't have his own vehicle at the time, also purchased an SUV. Similar make, model, and color. Not an exact match, but still I noticed. I also noticed every time I would decorate the yard, the neighbor and his wife would copy the exact same decorations. I started a garden in the front and arranged the flowers in a monogram style with the initials of our family's last name. There was absolutely no deviation from what I did. Their last names ended in C, but there in their garden was a monogrammed M. This is what caused my extended family to notice their behavior as well. When someone would visit, they would comment on how similar the homes were, even if they were of a different style. Halloween came, and they had the exact same decorations too. By Christmas and New Year's, I vowed I wouldn't take it anymore, and I bought incredibly expensive ornaments. I remember I smiled a genuine smile for the first time in months on my porch. I'd bested them, and I could feel it in my bones. Then the wife stepped out on their porch in the exact same sweater I was wearing, and she waved. I dropped my mug. It shattered, and I hardly gave it any mind as I went inside without a word. This was driving me insane. My husband continued to be amicable every now and then, because he didn't want to have a bad relationship with the people who lived so close by. He also didn't think much of all the things I noticed. He thought they were being friendly, awkward, but still friendly. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, Natalie, he would say in assurance. One day after he was returning from work, the neighbor waved my husband over. I saw them having a chat. Honestly, the whole thing was making me paranoid, and I was looking out of the curtains quite often. I'd seen a lot of things, and I kept a wary eye more than ever. When he came in, he said the neighbor wants me and his wife to be friends, and they want to get to know us and our children as well. I stared at him incredulously. Our children? My husband said he brushed the conversation aside as it made him feel very uncomfortable. Honestly, I have no interest in them because their lives, education, lifestyle choices, lack of children don't align with mine, and they were creeping me the fuck out. My children are the final frontier for me. I want them far away from those people, and I've done my best to keep it that way. I would load them into the truck in the garage and drive out. No interactions were necessary. Then we would come home and back in the garage again. They never even met our kids or had even seen them. This is when my husband had started to back away from them as well. He immediately stopped all interactions. I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the porch swing. One day, the neighbor met my husband at the mailbox. They had a one-sided conversation, though our neighbor seemed to take no notice. He plainly told my husband he wanted one, the swing, and complimented him on the addition. My husband thought the conversation was so strange because he never spoke, not in the 2 minutes of chattering that the neighbor did. The man had a conversation all by himself, he said. He decided then to avoid the man as much as he possibly could. After we started ignoring the couple, they went into overdrive trying to get our attention. I was paranoid about going outside and had several panic attacks. When I would go outside, one of the neighbors was always there. It was eerie. The wife consistently had a similar or exact same outfit on as me. She now lounged often on their new porch swing, the epitome of suburban innocence, swinging and reading a book. I kept watch from my window. When I was inside, they were too. When I was outside, one of them would be there too. My husband had been back and forth on business trips, and the man had been calling him, leaving messages asking where he was. I changed the number immediately. I was starting to scowl at the phone. It wasn't even ringing, and I would scowl at it. I didn't understand why they couldn't take the hint. For safety, I installed new locks and got security cameras too. I have also had some support from family. They would come and just watch the house, just make sure everything was fine. Based on their reports, we had every reason to justifiably be concerned. I remained afraid and worried because I've seen these people literally staring at our house when no one was outside. I was wound more tightly than a spring those days. I couldn't eat or sleep. It's like I was at the edge of screaming constantly. One night I went to get some ice. While I was downstairs, I saw a shadow move in the light cast from the streetlights. My heart raced and I froze. I was on the stairs, the half wall obscured me from view, and I just caught my neighbors staring into different windows of our home. The next day, I noticed furniture being delivered. It was the same furniture company I used. They bought the exact same couches we have. The same rugs, too. They changed their mailbox a week later. Some of my packages had sporadically begun to go missing as well. This new escalation left me quite uncomfortable. The final straw was seeing the most wanted list televised. The announcer discussed fugitives. A couple flashed on the screen. Visually, the picture appeared to be old and grainy, but nonetheless I recognized the couple and remained frozen. Following this, the announcer rattled off a list consisting of a series of heinous acts upon children and infants that had me hyperventilating. On the screen was a review of the 911 calls of frenzied and distraught parents calling to find their missing children. Next was a detailed listing of their last whereabouts, followed by a substantial reward for locating them and a phone number. I stared at the phone number as more details rolled out, such as the couple's love of hobbies like home renovations. I sat in a stunned silence. When my husband came home from his business trip the next day, he could see I was a mess. We agreed it was best to move somewhere else, anywhere, and fast. We had to get away, and then everything would be fine. We did it fast, moving quickly in the night. We left any and everything we felt was unimportant while simultaneously making sure that we were untraceable. We also dropped the children off with a handler. They would be transported to another couple. Normally, it's important to get the children more comfortable, more docile, forgetful before they transition to meet their new parents, but we failed to settle long enough to commence. The whole situation with those neighbors really threw off our fostering project. The new handlers would have to do all of the psychological work necessary to get the children to forget. It was always that way with older children. Babies were by far easier. The handlers took the children and gave us new IDs, passports, and dispensable money. Not sure how or when, but I knew who had made us. We were instructed to station at the family cabin for a getaway until otherwise instructed. Our mugs were everywhere. In essence, that meant we had been made, and we needed to be scrubbed. Later that evening, as I stared into the mirror, I grew furious. My bloodshot eyes glared, and yet the furrow in my brow barely formed. I had grown to like this new face. It was unfortunate I would have to change it so soon.